Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartlidge is with us. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. I don't know if you heard what the Labour Armed Forces Minister said this morning. A year to do a review before Labour decides then how to increase to 2.5%. Is that reasonable?
Well, I was very interested to see your interview. I think that delay is going to be damaging for the armed forces. We had an amazing opportunity, Keir Starmer, at the Washington summit to confirm he was going to go to 2.5% and set a clear timetable, because that's what the chiefs running our armed forces need. They've got some difficult decisions to make, but above all, we've got this dangerous world where we want to be deterring our adversaries. I think this would have been a really powerful signal to send. Instead, it's created delay, and I think that could be damaging.
So why didn't you do it when you were in power?
So, as you know, we had the biggest uplift in defence spending at the last spending review since the Cold War, when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and then we went into the election with a clear funded plan to get to 2.5% because we think it's the right thing to do.
So why didn't you do it earlier?
Well, so if you want me to go right back, 2010 we came into power. As you know, there was a letter left for us that there's no money left, so we had to prioritise sorting out the public finances. But of course, Rishi Sunak, when he became Chancellor, recognised the world was becoming more dangerous then. That was before the invasion of Ukraine. And he increased spending.
You had years to do it then.
That was a record uplift in spending. And as I say, at the election, a fully funded pledge to get to 2.5%, recognising the way the world is becoming more dangerous, not just with Ukraine, but what we've seen in the Red Sea. And that would have enabled those who run our armed forces to make plans today to deal with those threats, whereas now we just have uncertainty.
But how can you criticise the incoming government, who've only been in a few days, if you had the opportunity to do that, but you chose not to? I mean, it's a choice that you made.
We did choose to go to 2.5%, and we had a funded plan to do so.
But you didn't do it.
We've been increasing defence spending. We felt we had to increase it further. As I said, in the last spending review, that was the largest increase in defence spending since the Cold War, when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer. But as we were approaching the election, we recognised there's even more pressure now. We've had, of course, the impact of inflation because of the war in Ukraine, which pushed up energy prices and inflation. We had that impact on the equipment plan.
That as well.
Well, I'm pleased to say, Kate, we managed to get inflation back down to 2%, but what it has meant...
You didn't. The government has nothing to do with inflation, I'm told, when it goes up. It's when it comes down that you claim a responsibility for being successful with it. Well,
I'm happy to answer that. So, obviously, the biggest driver in inflation going up was the surge in energy prices after the invasion of Ukraine. That's widely accepted. What the government has to do when it's faced with high inflation is difficult. You have to say no to people. So, for example, we couldn't cut taxes then in the way we would have wanted to. And when we had these negotiations about public sector pay, we had to take a relatively tough position, a fair position, I would argue. And inflation is now back on target at 2%. That's incredibly important. That's a very good platform for the country. And our pledge was to get to 2.5% when the economic circumstances allowed. The previous Prime Minister took the view that having got the economy back into good shape, we should go to 2.5%. And by not announcing at the NATO summit that we're going to 2.5%, Keir Starmer has created massive uncertainty, and I do think that will be damaging for our armed forces at the worst possible time.
You say that, but surely they have to do their own review, the new government.
Well, I mean, it's confusing, isn't it? Because, as I understand, Keir Starmer has said he's got a cast-iron guarantee he's going to go to 2.5%.
But he needs to know how to spend it.
Oh, sure. So there will have to still be prioritisation about where to spend it, but I think on any measure you would conclude now that you need to go to 2.5%. And there's the pressure on the current equipment plan, the equipment plan in defence, which I was formerly Minister of Defence Procurement. That is the forward plan to buy equipment for the military. That came under pressure because of inflation. And without going to 2.5%, there will be some really difficult decisions to have to take. But it's also because the most powerful thing you can do for the military is to give them the best capability so that we deter our adversaries. And in this dangerous world, a clear message of going to 2.5% would have added to our deterrence, and I think would have been the right thing to do, whereas this delay we have seen of a year, I think, will be damaging for the armed forces.
And the most powerful thing the electorate can do is sack a government that they don't think are doing the right thing.
Correct.
And that's what they did?
Yeah, that's democracy.
Including the Defence Secretary.
Yeah, when you have an election, you have to reflect on it. We clearly had a very difficult result, lost lots of fantastic colleagues. I'm obviously deeply regret that, but that's democracy for you. We now have to pick ourselves up. We had our first shadow cabinet meeting yesterday, and we're focused on forming an opposition so that we can hold the government to account on these key issues like defence spending, but also like the announcement they've made on the Green Belt, etc. We need to be there as an opposition, holding the government to account.
And you need to provide a new leader as quickly as possible. Yeah,
I think you say as quickly as possible. I think the view of colleagues is that within reason, we want to take our time, make sure we make the right decision. You talk about the election, there were millions of people who didn't vote Conservative, who usually do, and I think they will expect us to reflect, to look at what happened, to analyse the election.
Worst result ever. For the party.
Irrefutable.
Worst result ever.
Irrefutable. And that's now a matter of...
But the man who was responsible for it, who led you over the top, and this is what happened, is still leading the party.
Well, he's clear. He's an interim leader until we have arrangements in place to get a new leader. And, of course, there is a process to go through. But I think the most important thing, and I know this because like all my colleagues, we knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors through that election campaign. People were exasperated, but they want to see us take the time to make the right decision so that our new leader has a positive alternative to Labour come the next general election.
Who would you like to see as the next leader? I thought I'd ask you. I know you're not going to tell me.
I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you wait and see who the candidates are, don't you?
Who would you like to see as the candidate list?
But there isn't one at the moment. We've got some fantastic colleagues still.
Like who?
Who've held on. And I'm sure there will be a good choice of very talented people.
With his military background?
I think we have several colleagues who've got a very good background.
Tiptoeing through the raindrops now, aren't you? You were very forthright at the start of this interview, and now you're thinking, oh, I better not get drawn into that.
No, it's OK. I'm forthright on defence because I think that's about national interest. I think that it was a mistake of Starmer.
A strong leader.
Not to commit to 2.5% is a big mistake.
Having a strong leader is important.
Absolutely,
for the party
but we're not yet in a position to... I can't comment. I don't know who the candidates are. I just know, luckily,
would like to see,
we've still got some very good colleagues who,
like Tom Tugendhat,
who stayed in post, who managed to hold on in a very difficult election. But I think it's right we take our time, and it's not just about the people, it's about, what are the policies, because I think the big thing is we've got to reconnect with the British public. And to be honest, they're not...
Jeremy Hunt?
I think he's ruled himself out, actually. But
yeah, they always do.
I thought he made one of the best speeches, if I may, on election night. I think he was very gracious. He recognised the point that, as an opposition, we have to be responsible. We have to support the government when it's right, when it's in the national interest. And as in defence, I will support my opposite number on Ukraine. And there'll probably be many others, but we'll do the right thing. We'll support the government when it's right and hold them to account as an opposition. I think people would be very surprised if I put my name forward, given I probably wouldn't have any
Boris Johnson became Prime Minister.
Look, we will have, many potential candidates, but we've got to take our time, debate it. I think the key thing today as Shadow Defence Secretary is, look, out there in the public, I think they will be concerned that in this dangerous world, the government's going to, spend a year working out what we all know they need to do, which is to go to 2.5% as soon as possible. That would enable our service chiefs to plan. Instead, they're going to get lots of uncertainty, which I think will be damaging. OK,
it's good to see you. You're going to watch the football tonight?
Of course, and I'm very interested to see your Meerkats predictions. I don't know what that's pointing to.
Did you see the Meerkat prediction?
It was unclear. I hope it's not a penalty shootout.
No, it was just saying, and they've been correct on all of them, and they said that England are going to win.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
Exactly. We're good at penalty shootouts now, apparently, my son tells me.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Exactly that. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.